This video won't contain any major story spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom, but I will be looking into several environmental factors in the game and how they relate to the game's predecessor, Breath of the Wild. There may be notable areas or items we discuss here, but I won't be talking about any major story stuff beyond what you're likely to encounter pretty early on after the Great Sky Islands. Cheers! Hello friends. So a few weeks ago now, I posted an admittedly poorly worded tweet expressing that I didn't quite understand some of the criticisms that people have had about Tears of the Kingdom. And, well, Twitter being Twitter, people were very quick to clarify their feelings on the matter. This is not to say that the game is beyond critiquing. I have a handful of criticisms myself, but I guess I just don't align with these ones in particular. So I guess I wanted to make a video addressing the subject. In that tweet, I talked about the criticism people had saying that the game felt too disconnected from Breath of the Wild. Again, a view I don't really share. But to these people's credit, one oft-cited point is the sudden vanishing of almost all the ancient Sheikah relics found around Hyrule. In Breath of the Wild, the Sheikah technology was a sort of ubiquitous facet of the game. Factoring in DLC, there were 136 ancient Sheikah shrines spread out across every corner of the map. 137 if you count the Shrine of Resurrection, where we begin the game. And the four main dungeons were the Divine Beasts, colossal Sheikah-made machines styled after animals. The DLC added in another dungeon which was also of ancient Sheikah origin. In essence, this technology is such a huge part of Breath of the Wild's identity. It makes up glowing points of interest across the map, giving us objectives to explore no matter where we go. It plays a vital part in the game's main story as well as a good bulk of its side quests. It's the source of Link's main abilities and even works to immerse us into the world via its diegetic UI choices. So the map, scope, camera, and pretty well everything related to the Sheikah slate is canonically happening in the game. When you pull up the map screen, it's not just a menu for us the player. It's canon in the game that Link is looking down at the map on his Sheikah slate. So with this technology being of such importance, it is understandably jarring for some when all of that technology seemingly vanishes off of the face of the earth without a trace or an explanation. This being a direct sequel, some take that as a matter of continuity feeling broken, and on the surface, sure. It is sort of a strange feeling walking up to a spot where I know a Sheikah shrine or tower used to be, and there just being nothing there. From an IRL development standpoint, these relics serve no purpose to the gameplay of this game, so removing them absolutely makes sense. But that isn't quite good enough for us, the lore enthusiasts out there. But as is often the case with Zelda lore, things do start to become more apparent the closer we look. And as usual, an explanation can be found for this if we do a bit of reading between the lines, combined with a bit of good old-fashioned speculation. So let's get into it. We know from the end of Breath of the Wild that the Divine Beasts essentially powered down and stopped working. Zelda specifically mentions Varuta, but it's safe to assume that this was actually the case for all four of them. We can see in the post-credit scene that all of the usual lustrous blue glow has faded. This is usually something you can see from almost any distance in the game, but there is no light within the Divine Beasts anymore. For comparison, the shrines and towers still give off that glow, but based on where this cutscene takes place, Varuta is the closest of the four to where Link and Zelda are situated, so it's likely that this is the one she simply noticed first, which is why she specifically mentions it. As for why it powered down, I think this is because of the champion's spirits finally being able to rest. Keep in mind that the Divine Beasts were not so autonomous like the Guardians were. They require a pilot with which they can make a spiritual bond. While the champions all perished a century before before the game, their spirits lingered on within the halls of their respective divine beasts. When Link liberates the beasts, the champion's spirits are able to complete their mission, taking up the mantle of pilot one last time, even in the form of a spirit, so that they can all strike at Ganon. With the calamity defeated and their regrets eased, their spirits, as well as the king's, are able to finally rest. So with the champions passing on to the afterlife, which we quite literally see happen, that connection, that spiritual bond is broken, and the divine beasts can no longer function. As far as the shrines and towers go, it would make some sense for them to essentially retract back into the ground. After all, at the beginning of Breath of the Wild, the towers all emerge from beneath the surface of Hyrule after the exposed top of the Plateau Tower is found and activated. While many of the shrines were already on the surface, there were plenty that also emerged from below ground, usually being the reward for some side quest or another. That said, as plausible as this all would sound, I don't think that is quite what happened here. Rather, I believe there were 3 individuals directly responsible for the sudden vanishing of all this technology: the shrines, the divine beasts, and the towers. The first 2 individuals, I believe, were making a cooperative effort: Purah and Robbie. In Breath of the Wild, these 2 were the heads of their respective tech labs, each doing deep research into how to repurpose and utilize this ancient technology. Robbie was situated in Akala and was using scavenged parts from Guardians to craft for Link weapons and armor. As for Purah, she was found at the far end of Hateno. Along with her assistant Simon, her research mostly seemed to focus on using the Sheikah slate, improving the functionality of its runes, which may not sound like it's all that helpful, but these runes can infinitely generate explosives out of thin air, or freeze time, or act as a radar to detect literally any object within their environment that you simply take a photo of. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that their century of research was well spent. She didn't invent these functions, but she was able to enhance or restore them, which is a big help. Regardless, the tolls of both their research can be seen. They each have masses of discarded Guardians and spare parts piled up outside of their respective labs. At the beginning of Tears of the Kingdom, the 2 have rejoined and combined their focus, with Purah drawing up designs to make what is essentially a sleeker new model of the Sheikah slate called the Purah Pad, and Robbie actually assembling the prototype. We also know that they designed the new Skyview towers, while contracting Hudson Construction Co. to handle the actual construction part. But why not just continue to use the Sheikah slate and existing towers for this? Well, I believe it's a simple matter of learning from the past. The calamity was something that Hyrule had prepared for vigorously, and they had hoped to turn back Ganon using that ancient Sheikah technology. However, as the spirit of King Rome tells us, Ganon is cunning and learned from his previous defeat 10,000 years prior. He corrupted the Guardians and Divine Beasts, turning Hyrule's defense into his own personal army. Sure, Link was able to liberate the beasts, but not only did that take a century, but it also doesn't change the fact that Hyrule was basically raised by these automatons to begin with. At this point, as enthusiastic as Purah, Robbie, and Zelda are about the wonders of this ancient technology, it is likely that it was seen as too much of a liability to just keep lying around. If Ganon were to return and to try to take control of these machines again, it could once more spell devastation for the kingdom. So the logical thing to do is to dismantle it all. Most of it stopped working anyways, so the best thing to do is to take it all apart just to be safe. I have no doubt that the advantages of having this technology were not lost on this trio. So the next logical thing to do is take what they learned from this technology and redesign it in a way that could not be turned against them. So we get the Purah Pad and brand new towers for topographical data collection. This is also likely the reason Robbie is no longer designing weapons, but instead things with more peaceful application. But I digress. It's also possible that with everything everything powering down, that the Sheikah slate and towers and shrines stopped working and being able to interface with each other, forcing their hand in redesigning and rebuilding these towers in order to still keep these advantages of fast travel and data collection. While we're at it, I'm just going to point out that this stuff wasn't built from scratch either. At a glance, it's clear that the Purapad is obviously cobbled together using pieces of ancient technology, but the Skyview towers are a little more interesting. In order to build these, some parts of these ancient structures would be essential. These terminals seem to be repurposed from either the terminal points of the divine beasts or from the shrine entrances, and the main central cylinder of the tower is almost certainly built using the elevator shafts from the shrines. Even the travel gates, that's the in-game name for these warp points, are taken right off of the shrines. Construction of these towers would simply not have been possible without taking components from those ancient structures and repurposing them. So that's a large part of it, for sure, but I don't think that quite accounts for everything being missing all of a sudden. After all, with just how many of these shrines and towers there were, there should be heaps of scraps, spare parts, and ancient materials just lying around, but there simply isn't. And even though the implication, as far as I can see, is that it's been roughly 5 or 6 years between games, dismantling all of that is a huge undertaking. More work than I think could be accomplished reasonably in that time, in addition to the construction of these new towers. But as I mentioned before, there is a third figure that I believe contributed to these relics vanishing. That is, of course, Ganondorf himself. Ganondorf is, to put it simply, very cunning. This is a villain who always learns from his mistakes. The Calamity may have been a puppet of his, but it was still enacting his will. As previously discussed, the ancient Sheikah technology punished the Calamity 10,000 years ago. He learned from this, so when he was able to redeploy his phantom puppet to attack Hyrule again, he responded with a plan, turning that technology against the kingdom and gaining an army in the process. While this was certainly devastating for the kingdom, from his point of view, this was only a temporary victory. Only 100 years later, which in terms of his lifespan goes, is probably not that long, all things considered, Link re-emerged and claimed victory. Again, looking at this from Ganon's point of view. His enemies were able to use this technology to resurrect Link. Link then used the shrines to regain his strength gradually, then was able to purge the divine beasts and turn them back against Ganon. So even though he was able to gain control of them, he wasn't able to keep control of them. So when it came time to make his move again during the upheaval, it isn't a stretch to say that Ganon also saw this technology as a liability. He was able to use it temporarily to gain victory, but ultimately it didn't matter. The Calamity was still sealed away by the princess and the hero. So when Link and Zelda find Ganondorf's body as the source of this new gloom and the upheaval occurs, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Ganondorf strategically deployed gloom from the depths to basically disintegrate whatever Sheikah technology was within reach. Keep in mind that gloom is stronger than malice, and is even powerful enough to nearly destroy the Master Sword, a blade able to cleave through evil energy. If the Blade of Evil's Bane can be reduced to this state during only a few moments of exposure to gloom, then reducing the shrines to dust would be an easy task. This also accounts for why many of these deep chasms that are seeping gloom have sprouted up in the exact locations where shrines once stood, because the shrines in those spots were devoured. It's almost a shame too, as prominent and frankly as impressive as all of this technology was, it was seen by basically all parties as too dangerous to be kept around. Between the combined efforts of Purah and Robbie dismantling and repurposing it, and the effects of the upheaval with gloom spreading out of the depths of the kingdom and swallowing up any other technology that Purah and Robbie couldn't get around to, in the end these ancient relics and artifacts were quickly eradicated, with only small reminders of the large role that they once played. Thank you all so much for watching, and an extra big thanks goes to my supporters across both Patreon and here on YouTube as a channel member. So thank you to Greymage, Brenda, Tetra, Hylian Wes, Justin, Midnight Naomi, and Bunny, as well as so many more people, the names of which you're seeing on screen here. Thank you all so much for all of the support. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.